Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're connecting from. In case you guys do not know me, let me introduce myself. My name is Antonio Sanjo, and I practice and teach hypnosis. I practice four techniques, but I teach two of them: introspective hypnosis and past life therapy. Today, I'm in Georgia by Lake Lanier, spending a couple of days here. And during these days, I was remembering about my father and father passed away in 2020, and I remember that process and how, um, even though I knew about hypnosis, even though I know about spirituality, um, it was still hard for me to process. You might think that, well, if you do this and if you deal with your clients going into past lives and they experience death in past life, you should be very familiar with this. Yes, but are you ever prepared to experience the loss of a loved one? My opinion, my humble opinion is it doesn't matter how much you know about this, it's always going to be hard to process. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about this topic, which is something, I mean, it's a difficult topic for a lot of people, and we're going to talk about death. Um, and how to be prepared for death if there's something like that, if we can ever be prepared for that, and how to help our loved ones to die properly. I want to call it that way, to die properly. So let me start by mentioning a few items from the Spirit's book from Allan Kardec. If you're not familiar with Allan Kardec is, I recommend you to watch the movie Kardec on Netflix. Kardec, that's KARDEC. Very nice movie. Allan Kardec is considered the coder of the Spirited Doctrine, which is actually in that book. This is information provided by spirits themselves through mediums. So, what do spirits say about death? Well, this book is based on questions and answers to spirits. So, let's start with question. And by the way, these questions have numbers. So, if you have that book, you can look for this question. Question number 163. It says, the question is, upon leaving the body, is the soul immediately conscious of itself? The answer provided by spirits is, immediately is not the right word. It remains in a state of confusion for some time. What is this telling us? Which is actually what I found in my sessions, especially when I found lost souls attached to my clients. Sometimes the soul is not aware of the death of the physical body. So remember that for the soul, let me back up a little bit. Two concepts, right? Spirit is out of the body. Spirit is energy with consciousness. That's spirit. And a soul is an incarnated spirit. So in other words, uh, in the body is soul, out of the body is spirit. So sometimes, depending on the type of death, souls are not aware of the death of the physical body. And this creates a confusion because the soul, the spirit never dies. For the spirit, what we call past lives are really memories in other bodies, right? What died was the body, not the soul, not the spirit. So it can, after the death, if depending on the type of death, it can create some confusion. They might not be aware about the death of the physical body. And let's talk about that. How is that possible, Antonio? Well, what I encounter in my sessions is that when the death was during the time they were unconscious, for example, during anesthesia on an operating table, during their sleep, during overdose, what else can bring can put you in an unconscious state? Um, if you freeze to death, you first fall unconscious and then you die. Hunger would cause the same situation. So when the soul doesn't when the soul doesn't understand what happened, it kind of goes to sleep. Let's put it that way. And when the soul wakes up, the soul is already in a different dimension, and this creates a confusion because they are seeing their body, they still feel alive, and they don't understand why people around them cannot hear them, cannot see them. Okay, what happened during the death? I think it's very important that we know how to be prepared for that. But before I continue, let me read the next question, right? So question number 164. Do all spirits, I'm sorry, do all spirits experience the same confusion that follows the separation of the soul and the body to the same degree for the same amount of time? In other words, do all spirits experience that confusion the same way? The answer is no. It depends on how evolved they are. Those who are already purified are almost immediately self aware because of their detachment from the matter during corporeal life. However, carnal individuals with impure consciousness retain, retain the impressions of matter much longer. So it depends on how evolved you are. Whenever you process death, your experience is, evolve as a spirit. Your death and your awareness after the death of the physical body is going to be different, right? And then they have question 165. Question 165 says, does an understanding of spiritism, meaning knowing about spirits, right? Does an understanding of spiritism have an influence on the shorter or longer duration of this confusion? The answer is it has a very considerable influence because the spirit understood what is the situation or what is its situation would be beforehand. The practice of good and purity of conscience exerts the most influence. However, so yes, knowing about what comes after the death of the physical body, understanding that we're spirits having a human experience, that we come over and over to this planet that is called planet Earth, which is a school, to evolve, to learn through emotions. We learn in happiness, we learn in suffering. So the more aware we're about, more aware we're about that situation and our quality of spirits, um, the less confused we're going to be after the death of the physical body. Let's keep talking about the death. And I'm sorry, the sun is very shy, even though it's a little bit chilly today. Um, let's talk about this. During the death, and I will repeat the words of my teacher, Dr. Jose Luis Cabuli, who taught me past life therapy. I'm going to repeat his words. Death is a critical process for the soul. It is another life experience. The same way we're affected by the birth, the same way we're affected by the time we're in the womb, death of the physical body is really being born again in the spiritual world, right? So it is important to understand how to process that moment because we're putting our whole reincarnation at risk. Antonio, how come? How is that possible? Because when we're dying, and again, it all depends on the type of death. When we're dying, we're already making decisions. We're making unconscious decisions sometimes that while the body is dying. Let's say that somebody killed you and you decide to say, okay, I'll come back for you. I will look for you. I want my revenge. I want my vengeance. So what is that going to cost on you once you leave the body? Go and look for that person. You might not want to go to the light yet. Another one, let's say that you did bad things while you were alive. By the time you're dying, you might say, I realize all the things that I have done, and so I don't deserve to go to heaven. Let's say the person is Catholic, right? Or they say, I don't deserve to be forgiving. Well, it doesn't matter how many times I lived. I don't deserve to be happy for what I have done. So you switch from being the aggressor and the attacker, from playing that role, to engaging in the victim role, which you can carry for many lives after you realize that you don't get anything out of the victim role, right? What else can happen? The soul, when it leaves the body, it keeps the same personality, the same essence, the same belief system. Believe it or not, your belief system can also create problems for you. Let's say again that you did bad things when you were alive, but even though you were raised Catholic, what is going to happen when you leave the body? You say, I'm not going up there because they're gonna send me to hell. And hell, I mean, it's not a physical place. It's just state of consciousness, state of evolution of the mind. They're gonna send me to hell. They're gonna send me to the purgatory, and these places do not exist. Antonio, how come you're saying those things? Who are you to say this? I'm nobody, you know. But this is what I found in my sessions, and this is actually what I learned from my teachers. It is kind of a virtual reality of the soul, what they consider to be hell or the purgatory. Um, if you check online, there's an article about John Paul II. He wrote a book, I think it's Mea Culpa, where he apologized for the things that the Catholic Church had done in the past, right? You're talking about the Crusaders, you're talking about the Inquisition, all that stuff. But he also, in one of his audiences, I think it was 1999, he said that hell and purgatory are not physical places, do not exist. They're just states of mind, the states of the soul, right? So your belief system can also create problems when you exit the body, because in the spirit world, religion, I mean, I don't know if it exists or not. It affects while you're here before you go to the light, you know. So anyway, and going back to saying it is important to understand what death is and how to process death. Now, speaking about your relative, let's say it's time for you to help your father, your mother, God forgives, you know, siblings die. How can you help them? Help them complete whatever is pending for them. If they have anything to forgive, help them to forgive. If you need to apologize to them. Help them complete whatever is pending. Because if the soul, after leaving the body, feels there's something pending, they will not go. They will try to stay. Okay, number one. Number two, as your parents or your loved ones are dying, don't tell them, please don't leave me. I don't know what I would do with you. Please don't go. Because what you're doing is you're causing a negative effect, I would say. Because they would try to stay with you or close to you because they feel that if they leave you, you're going to be in problems or you're going to suffer, that maybe you might not be ready to be by yourself. So I remember when my father was dying, right? And my brother was trying to make it to the US back then. And my mom was telling, I mean, with good intentions, she didn't know anything about this. With good intentions, she was saying, you need to try to wait for your son. He's going to come and see you. I said, Mom, don't say that to my dad. He might be ready to go and you're just holding him, right? So be careful with the things that or what you say, or let's say we need to be careful with the things that we say to our loved ones as they're dying, because that can bring consequences. What else? Let me think of other issues, right? What is a common thing now in medicine, right? Um, Relatives of the person that is about to die, sometimes they tell them, make them sleep, don't allow them to feel anything. I don't want them to be aware of what's happening. Or sometimes loved ones know already. I mean, you know already that your mother, your father is going to die, but you prefer not to tell them. You just want them to die, and without realizing, because you think that you don't want them to suffer. That's your intention, which is a good intention. But what's going to happen by the time this person goes to sleep and doesn't know what is coming, and they, let's say, wake up in this other dimension, and they don't understand what is happening. They're walking around the house. I mean, moving around the house, moving around the hospital, trying to make sense of what is happening. And this is what the spirits will say. And the spirits say in this book that they will be in a state of confusion for some time. So if we can do anything to help our loved ones, um, I don't want to say die easier, but at least allow them to die properly, to process whatever they need to process. If they want to say, if there's anything pending with your loved ones, go ahead and talk about that. If anything needs to be forgiven, anything that you need to forgive or apologize for, go ahead and do it. Because if you don't do it, because this body dies, that's not going to make any difference. The soul is still alive, and the soul will still try to stay for some time, trying to finish all of the things that the soul was not able to complete. All of these pending items. So help your loved ones to process everything they can during that time. If you have somebody that is dying, they need to know they're dying. Don't keep this. I mean, don't keep the truth just for you. They need to be aware of what is happening. I know that it sounds difficult. I know that it sounds like, Antonio, you don't have any feelings. How come you're saying this? It's for their own good. They need to be aware what is happening to the body. You need to be aware what's going to happen after the body dies. If you want to talk to them about what happens afterwards, go ahead and do it. This is going to help them. I remember my father had cancer, and I remember even I mean 2 years or more I was talking to him, like indirectly about my sessions that I was finding in my sessions about lost souls, about the process of death, about what the soul experiences after dying. So I was not telling my dad, I want you to be ready, but I was talking to him about those topics. I was there until my father took his last breath, and it was not an easy task to help him just detach from the body, because I could see that how that process even started, like more than 20, I mean 20, 48 to 72 hours before the time of the actual death. Antonio, so how do you know if what you did with your father worked? Well, last year I had a session with a medium. Her name is Alicia Zavala. She's a really good medium. And my father came through. Antonio, how do you know if it was actually your father? Well, number one, uh, she didn't know me. She didn't know anything about my father. So she described my father. And then my father started providing information to her that only my father and I knew. Nobody else knew about this. And he was giving me this information. This lady was telling me, right, your father wants you to know that he knows that you kept his watch, and that was true. So he gave a lot of proof that it was him. And one of the questions that I asked, if I had, if I was allowed to ask that question, it was if his transition was smooth, if he was okay, if it was easy. And Alicia, the medium, said he's not allowed to talk about that, but he wants you to know that he was not scared because you were preparing him. You were telling him about what you know about the spirituality and about the death. He was not afraid when the moment came. So that to me was totally worth it. So, and that confirms what I learned from my teachers, what I get in my sessions. And this is why I'm sharing this with you. If you have somebody that is dying, you need to prepare them. I know it is painful for you to talk about that with somebody that is dying, but it's for their own good. And at the end, it's also going to help you. Anyway, I don't want you to get bored with that, but let me see. If you want to read more about this, you can again go to the Spirit's book. Let me see the chapter. What is this chapter called? I think it's Life and Death. But you can start with the question numbers that I gave you. Um, let me see. Those. So with the question numbers I gave you, you can start checking the book, and that whole chapter talks about that, and it's going to give you a lot of information. I would really recommend you to read that book. I know in the Spanish version is like 606 pages. It's a lot of pages, a lot of reading, and even though I had been reading it like by parts based on what I needed, I one day decided to read the whole book, and it's priceless. The information that is there is priceless, and you can see the teachings from advanced spirits and how this information is given to us, and how Allan Kardec was able to put everything into a book. I would really recommend you to watch that. I mean, to read the book and watch the movie Kardec. Anyway, this is all for now. I hope this information was useful for you. Until next time, thank you and bye bye.